blog viewers. We're going to continue with self-creation today, and this is now 3 years into the blog. This could be one of the first of the human goods that we wrap up here with our first 33 posts. And then, of course, after the 33 posts, I'm going to do one or two videos and then a final post trying to summarize everything we've learned on that good. But self-creation could be the first one that is completed, and that might be a good thing because it kind of involves many of the other goods, and it's been obviously one that I particularly enjoyed personally working on because that's sort of one of my main interests in life. Now, self-creation is, I would say, a fluid process that continually involves tweaks here and there to the thing being worked on. And obviously the thing being worked on is the self. And obviously the only person that can directly perform this kind of work is yourself. More specifically, the thing being worked on is what I would argue is the gift of human DNA, which through the bounty of the human mind and its neurons and its ability to think and reflect and process information at an incredible rate, allows the self-creation project to proceed in an orderly fashion. It is a privilege, I would argue, to develop one's DNA, especially human DNA, to the fullest extent possible. And this development of human DNA is basically another way of conceiving self-creation. Again, this is a unique human privilege. I would argue no other creature has this sort of privilege of self-creation through their DNA. Nothing in physical reality has this privilege of self-creation through DNA. It's absurd to talk about the sun self-creating, or an ant self-creating, or a bee self-creating, or a bear self-creating. They just don't do that kind of thing. Their DNA is programs them to a very specific form of life that is pretty much unchanging for millions of years amongst billions or millions or billions of species members. Their DNA just doesn't give them the tools to be different in a meaningful sense from any other member of the species that has existed. But we, because of human DNA, have this ability, and the question is, how should we develop it, and what prevents us from doing it? Now, persons that enjoy the self-creation project, I would argue, fundamentally understand that the self is not fixed or constant for a lifetime by the accidental circumstances that basically had determined one's childhood, one's parents, one's early college and graduate school education, for one's first chosen career, one's first marriage. They absolutely detest the notion, persons again that enjoy self-creation, they absolutely detest the notion that one's life should be more or less determined in its general course by one's mid-20s or one's mid-30s. There's absolutely no reason, I would argue, for the self-creation project to end at any point in our lifetime. The only thing that should end this project is one's exit from reality, conscious reality, and perhaps some other serious mental disease or defect that really prevents one from doing this activity. Now, putting aside mental disease or defect, what is the thing that prevents someone from engaging in a lifetime self-creation? If the DNA allows it, if the DNA permits it, the DNA is capable of it, why is it that people don't do this kind of thing more often? And the answer, I think, one answer is very clear. The person is trapped either in the past, the present, or the future. Mostly, I think people talk about being trapped in the past as a bad thing. That's kind of common sense nowadays. But I think it's equally bad to be trapped in the present or the future. So any of these three trapped conditions, whether in the past, whether in the present, whether in the future, prevents you, I think, from doing self-creation seriously and from taking the actions that would allow self to be created, to emerge or bloom out of the self. Now, being trapped in the past, present, or future, what does that mean? People say it without really defining it. People almost assume, or the statement is made with assuming that people get it. You say it and it's like, okay, I get what you mean. Well, what do you mean by that? I think it means that someone is overly attached to any of those three conditions, the past, present, and the future, overly committed to it, overly relying on it in some sense or another, whatever verbal formulation you want to use, but there is some sort of beholdenness to either the past, present, or future. Now, being trapped in the past means you're letting the past continually dominate the person you are today and will likely be tomorrow, even next year, the next decade. You aren't evolving and developing in response to the present, but you're sort of duty-bound. You're committed to the past commitments or past events of your life more than you should be. You can't break free from the past in some form or another. Sometimes, perhaps even often, this might be not even your fault because some sort of traumatic event or series of events you had no responsibility for caused this sort of entrapment to the past. In this case, I would argue therapy of the psychological variety is probably a very good idea for you to get rid of this kind of entrapment. But you can't self-create in any event when you're trapped in the past because you don't have the freedom to let go of the past and stop being subservient to it. Can't do that. Being trapped in the present means which I think is very common today, actually. Being trapped in the present means you are too preoccupied with the moment-to-moment nature of life and its demands. There's many, many different ways this can happen, but the common characteristic of all of them is you're consumed by the present. Consumed. If you have a demanding job, if you have a demanding family life, and you have a long commute, that's a common example. But if you have all of those things, demanding job, demanding family life, a long commute, that's it. You're done. You're pretty much consumed by the present every frickin' day. You can't and don't reflect much on your past, and you can't and don't reflect much on your future. All your energies are used in sort of addressing the moment-to-moment present. Answering text messages, updating your Facebook, paying bills, dealing with all the crap that happens on a day-to-day basis. So in this scenario, you can't self-create because you don't have the time to step out of the present and start charting sort of a grander narrative to your life. Start planning some fundamentally different approaches to life. Start evaluating what is the value of all the little things that tend to consume your present day after day after day. You don't have the reflexivity, you don't have the time, you don't have the ability to step out of that present. Being trapped in the future, again, another problem. This means you've let your life basically be guided by fantasy, by fantastic hopes for the future. You live in the hope that tomorrow will somehow be better than today and yesterday. But really, there's really no reason for you to think this. The coming and going of several thousand tomorrows have not sort of magically improved your life. So why should the next several thousand be expected to somehow do this? Even worse, self-creation is about acting in ways that actually change the content and nature of the self. But living in the future, hoping for the best in the future, is not a fundamentally action-oriented position on reality. It's a passive approach to reality. It locates the basis for life's improvement in some sort of vague hope or expectation for an improved future that, rather than behavior and conduct in the now, that slowly, gradually changes itself for the better. So I would argue all these three things are trapped in the past, trapped in the present, trapped in the future. These are all impediments and pitfalls and blockage points to self-creation. If you get trapped in any of these three, you're not going to self-create. You're not going to do it in a meaningful sense. And what do I mean by that? You're not going to do it in a way that yourself will be fundamentally different over time. You can see, and objectively, people would say, this person has become really a different person. This person is a better person. This person has really improved in significant ways across all areas of life. So what sort of relationship, now that we've established a pitfall, what sort of relationship to the past, the present, and the future do you need to have to self-create? And I would argue the right relationship is sort of a flowing dynamic relationship between the past, the present, and the future, without ever getting trapped or fixated on any of the three. Obviously, if you're flowing between past, present, and future, you're not ever fixed or trapped in any of those three. So you look to your past. You'd look to your past to see what you've done wrong, what repetitive mistakes you've made, what prejudices and mental ideas you have about reality that are just off, what you've enjoyed, what you're potentially good at, what you still haven't tried, what you're not good at, what you still haven't tried but you've always wanted to. So you look at all those things. That's all basic, that because they're in the past, you can't change them, but they're all sources of information for you. They're all sources of self-knowledge. They're all sources of knowing how you can conduct this self-creation project in a better way. Then you look to the present. You look to the present and you see what available opportunities in the now, in my current position, at my current age, where I live, my job, all the little present realities you deal with. What are my current available opportunities to self-create? What can I do here? How easy or hard is it on a realistic basis within the present to do any of these things within right now or relatively soon? And then you look to the future and you plan for the future to allow yourself more time and opportunities to structure your life in a way that allows for more self-creation in a good fashion. You look to the future and you set goals and benchmarks by which point you want to reach certain mini milestones on the self-creation journey. So I would argue this tendency to get trapped in either the past, present, or future is, to conclude, is probably one of the biggest reasons that people don't self-create. And if you're interested in self-creation, I would argue the right relationship is not fixation on any of those three, but again, perpetual flowing back and forth between past, present, and future. Continual reflection on the past to determine the things I mentioned. Continual examination in the present to see what action and conduct is available for you relatively soon to change the self, and plans for the future to either do more of that thing or allow more time to do those things. And I think that sort of flowing between past, present, and future will be much more conducive to self-creation. So with that, I'll end this post.